Hey everybody, welcome back to All Fiction is Fantasy. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the first review of 2025, we are going to take a look at this anomaly, The Shadow People by Margaret St. Clair. Let's read the back of the book. The invasion of the hallucinogenic people from underneath. They had existed from time immemorial, hidden in a space warp far beneath the surface of the Earth. Until now, their only form of nourishment had been a strange hallucinogenic grain. Now they hungered for human flesh. The Earth was to be their stockyards and mankind their meat. Okay, so I've read a lot of authors and books from the Appendix N, the appendix that Gary Gygax compiled with all of the influences that went into creating Dungeons and Dragons, and The Shadow People is on the Appendix N. So some of the authors I've read, Brackett, Carter, DeCamp, Derleth, Denzani, Farmer, Fox, Howard, Lanier, Leiber, Lovecraft, Merritt, Moorcock, Offutt, Tolkien, Vance, Wellman, and Zelazny. So that's quite a few and quite a few of their books. I love so many of these authors and their books, but The Shadow People by St. Clair really does stand apart. It's both the weirdest entry on the Appendix N and also perhaps oddly the most relevant to the dungeon crawling experience of an RPG. At least a portion of it is. So at its core, The Shadow People is about a species of cannibal elves who abduct a woman and take her into the tunnels of the underneath. And then her half-elf partner has to make a dangerous journey to save her. Along the way, this half-elf meets other types of elves. He meets a gray dwarf. He finds Merlin's sword, overcomes environmental obstacles and ambushes, and sustains himself by eating a magical corn fungus which makes him hallucinate. However, all of this takes place in the late 1960s in the Bay Area and Central Valley of California. As a matter of fact, this is the only work of sword and sorcery that I know of that mentions and has a pivotal scene that takes place in my hometown of Fresno, California. But what's more, at a certain point in the book, there is a tonal shift into a Fildickian-style dystopian nightmare complete with robot cops and a local government oppressing its people under the guise of safety and security. The Shadow People is most of all a work of counterculture speculative fiction. It touches upon the ideas of a modern free society at war with tradition and conservatism, the ideas of hallucinogenic drugs, practical modern magic, gender roles, and troubled romantic relationships. But it does so without being judgmental or preachy. It's also incredibly readable and highly entertaining. There is a point about a third way through the book where I was beginning to wonder if the book would be able to sustain the thrill and mystery and excitement of its opening chapters. It flirts with a problem that so many journey books have issues with. All too often, when a long and arduous journey is part of a hero's quest, authors of these kinds of stories feel the need to ramble on and on at great lengths about the journey, and the plot becomes a slog as the readers have to work through pages and pages and pages of endless descriptions of walking and surviving. However, St. Clair only lets this happen for a few too many pages, maybe like 2 chapters, before she unleashes upon the reader one of the wildest and bravest plot and tonal shifts that I've ever read in genre fiction. When I say the book is Fildickian, I really do mean it, and it's not just a bad pastiche of something that Philip K. Dick would have written. I mean that it tackles the same kinds of themes that so many of Dick's best books do, and it does so with a similar kind of feel and style. There is a real sadness and sense of longing to the last half of this book. While the first third is a great dungeon-crawling adventure story, the final third is something else entirely, as we find our main characters dealing with a threat far more dangerous than evil gray dwarves and magical weapons. They have to deal with what it means to be human in a world that is changing and becoming hostile towards the very idea of humanity. So Margaret St. Clair is a real anomaly. She was highly influential to the progression of sword and sorcery fiction and the ideas that would later become Dungeons and Dragons. She was incredibly original in how she approached the genre, and yet today she is all but completely forgotten. Almost none of her books or story collections are in print, and most of them are becoming increasingly rare and expensive, the Shadow People included. The cheapest I've seen this book go for is around $30, and I paid a lot more for mine, but that's because my copy is in really great shape. I mean, it looks almost brand new, like it has never been read, and I really wanted to have a pristine copy of this book. I think it's a really important book. It's a brave book. It does something different in a genre that is mostly made up of kind of, more conventional tropes, more conventional ideas. And I typically like that. I like things that are just like, only different. But sometimes you want something that's really going to knock an idea out of a park and wow you with its originality and novelty. And The Shadow People does that and more. The Shadow People is a very special book. Seriously, I have never read anything that is even remotely like it. There are bits and pieces that remind me of different things, but the way that Sinclair combines all of those different pieces creates something truly original and remarkable. So I would say spend the money and get this book. It's hard to find. There are copies on eBay. They kind of come and go on eBay, but it's one of those rare collectible books that I think is worth every last penny that you will pay for. So all right, you guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this brief review of The Shadow People by Margaret St. Clair. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.